Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Today's message is entitled Tickled Ear Syndrome, wanting things to be true that simply are not true. We're going to start right away with some scripture. In 2 Timothy, Paul writes to Timothy, I solemnly charge you in the presence of God and of Messiah Yeshua, who is to judge the living and the dead, and by his appearing and his kingdom, preach the word, be ready in season and out of season, reprove, rebuke, exhort with great patience and instruction, for the time will come where they will not endure sound doctrine, but wanting to have their ears tickled, they will accumulate for themselves teachers in accordance to their own desires, and will turn away their ears from the truth and turn aside to myths. So Paul is talking about religion. Obviously, that's Paul's mission, was to make disciples of the nations and to spread the gospel far and wide. But here in the later days, in the latter days, this has turned into something a lot bigger, because we live in a post-Christian world. We live in a country, Western civilization has largely turned its back on Christianity and religion in general, and as we'll see here in a moment, some of that's by design. So in the absence of a religion, mankind's going to make one. That's what all this idolatry in the Old Testament and stuff. A lot of that has to do with the fact that a human being is wired to have a relationship with God and to recognize God. Creation testifies. And so in the absence of religion, religions show up, and a lot of times they don't even look like a religion. They look like careers, they look like business, it looks like, what do you spend most of your time doing and thinking about is probably your religion. Some people, their religion is, posting strange stuff on the internet and consuming all types of weird mythological information. But a couple years ago, there was this company that came along called Theranos, and I'm transitioning industries right now. For about 20 years, I've worked in analytical instrumentation and working on testing substances to find out what's in them, and I have an immense amount of experience on blood testing instruments and on analytical instrumentation. And it takes an amount of substance, whether you're looking for polymers, separating out the molecules of a polymer, or you're looking for lead, arsenic, selenium, thallium in a liquid, or whatever you're looking for proteins in blood, the instruments generally create a reaction that makes some type of a light reaction, whether it's a fluorescence, a luminescence, a chemical reaction, absorbing light, and it takes a certain amount of the substance in order to get the test. And sometimes you have to do stuff to the substance. So in the instance of blood testing, the smallest sample size I've ever heard of in blood testing world is 5 microliters. Now, a drop of water, if you just drop water with a droplet, is about 20 microliters. So if you think about a drop of water, 25% of that is the smallest sample size I've ever encountered that I can recall to actually create a reaction to give you a result on some analyte in blood. But it's not just 25% of the blood. What happens is the patient goes to a phlebotomist, which is the people who draw your blood, and they pull the blood out of you into a tube. Usually it's 5 milliliters, or a tube contains quite a lot of blood. That blood goes and gets to a laboratory where they've got tons of machines, and it gets put in a centrifuge. And the centrifuge spins, for 5 minutes or whatever, and it separates out that blood into its serum, its red blood cells, and its platelets. And so then the serum is on the bottom, so then the lab technicians will do some pour off, or they have machines that can dive down to the bottom of the tube and take the draw. So the 5 microliters was of of serum. So you could see how much work it takes to get that, because you can't get to that 5 microliters of serum without pulling a couple milliliters of blood out of a patient's arm and running it through a machine. And so then these tubes, in order to get 20 or 30 tests off of a test tube that came out of a person's arm, the tube will go around on a track inside the laboratory to several machines. And before it's done getting whatever panel of tests it's going to get, it's gone, or it's significantly reduced. So a 4 milliliter tube is probably down to, a milliliter and a half. And so this company Theranos came out, and this young lady dropped out of college, and she was able to convince an enormous amount of people that she came up with a technology where you could get 100, 150 tests out of a drop of unspun blood in a box at a Walgreens. Okay? So I just told you what it takes to get a 5 microliter test. If you have to run the test again, if there's a mistake, then you have to use 10. Okay? What she proposed was Star Trek absurd sci-fi. It was science fiction. But she was able to convince people who know everything I know about blood testing and more that this was possible. And she was able to defraud investors out of $1 billion on a technology that never existed, was never going to work. And the way she did it was by separating out her laboratory to where, people working on different tests never talked to each other. And it was an elaborate fraud and scheme. And she convinced PhDs and people with tens of years of experience working in blood labs and working on regulated industrial projects and FDA submissions that it was possible. And it's not possible. It's never been possible in order to basically get rid of a lab. A blood lab employs a lot of people, a lot of machines. It's a big one like a Quest or a LabCorp. You're talking about them, spending millions of dollars a day running tests, running biological samples through their laboratory. It wasn't true. But why? Why was it possible? Because the people wanted it to be real. Because these folks wanted it to be real, whether it's because of greed or because of their technological prowess or they wanted power, whatever. But the people working for that company, some of them had to leave. Some of them realized what was happening, and they just got new jobs. They realized that they had been hoodwinked, and they moved on. But a lot of people who still work in the industry were either completely fooled and they still believe the Kool-Aid, or they just wanted to be. They didn't mind being lied to. They didn't mind working on a fraud. Why? Because they wanted their ears tickled. They wanted it to be true. This last week, we had a couple of enormous victories for our country, which they keep talking about them as victories for conservatism when the judges are just putting the country back the way it's supposed to be. Any American, any person in the world can look up the text of the United States Constitution and all of its amendments and see that there is nothing in there about abortion whatsoever. There's nothing about abortion. There's not even anything about a right to privacy. The closest thing we have to that is freedom from unreasonable search and seizure, which means that we don't have a right to privacy. It just means that before a government can invade your privacy, they have to show just cause. And so for 50 years, or 49.8 years, we've had this ruling from the Supreme Court who just decided that they wanted to invent a right of a woman to have abortion through a right to privacy that doesn't even exist. It talks about a penumbra of emanations. Literally, they say that bad doctrine interpreted over long periods of time brought them to the point where they thought they could invent a right from the bench. And for 49 years, abortion has been a right in the United States when it's not in our Constitution at all. And if we look at this, the way I explained it to my kids is that this country was founded with slavery being a right of the states to regulate. And over time, the northern states stopped slavery on their own, but the southern states didn't. It ended up in a war where Abraham Lincoln declared the slaves free, even though he did not have the authority to do that. And there was a civil war. 600,000 Americans died to end slavery. And at the end of that war, how did slavery stop being a thing? Well, in order to force the states to not do slavery, the Constitution had to be amended. And it was, praise God. Slavery came to an end. And then, 50 years later, obviously women have the right to vote. Obviously women participate in society. But the way this country was set up is that women did not have the right to vote. And in order to get that in the Constitution, it had to be put in the Constitution and through an amendment. So the idea that a court could just put something in the Constitution and make it a right, it's just not true. But for 50 years, because people wanted it to be true, lawyers have gone to school and started careers, and people have lived their entire lives believing this right is a right in our Constitution when it's not really there. Because if we had to amend the Constitution to end something as obvious as slavery or as obvious as women having the right to vote, then obviously you have to amend the Constitution for something so specific and horrific as abortion. The same thing in our Constitution is the free exercise clause. It has been ignored for decades until last week. Right? It says Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion nor prohibiting the free exercise therein. Well, the free exercise clause was completely ignored in favor of getting rid of religion in the country. Well, let me tell you something, brothers and sisters. You can try to get rid of religion, but all you're going to end up is a different religion. And these people who believed this 20-year-old gal had invented a technology to erase the laws of physics, they believed she was their god. The same with these lawyers and these historians. They want to live life on their own terms. They want to make their own laws, their own rules, whether in religion or within secularism. And to bring this back to religion, this something our religion is that Sunday, Christmas, Easter, and the Trinity. Not one of those things is in the Bible. The Sunday, once a year, we keep Sunday holy on Pentecost. Yeshua was not born on December 25th. Nobody who's gone to Bible school will ever tell you that. It's not true. It's an abomination. If you want to find out when he was born, it takes a lot of study and cross-referencing to get to a general time frame of the fall. Why? Because his birth wasn't recorded, because his death was the important part, not the birth. We know exactly when he died. Easter is literally a celebration to a pagan fertility goddess. It has nothing to do with the Bible. Shouldn't be doing it at all. And if you look at the screen, the Trinity is at no point in time are Yahweh and Yeshua co-equal. Yahweh is always the boss. And if you look right here on 2 Timothy, I charge you in the presence of God and of Yeshua. There's two beings, two separate beings. And there's no third one there. So these things aren't true, but why? Because people want to make their own stuff up. They want to live life on their own terms. Right? You want to just read the Bible the same way that Clarence Thomas reads the Constitution. It says what it says until it doesn't. And then you say, I don't know. And then you move on. So why do all these remarkably educated and bright people keep falling for these things? We've got scientists here, we've got lawyers, and we've got theologians. Those are the three big ones, right? Scientists meaning doctors, physicians, chemists, chemical engineers, design engineers believing stuff at Theranos. You've got lawyers and historians on the Constitution, which, these just is what it is. Our history is what it is. We need to amend the Constitution to put something to enshrine a new right. And these doctrines from the very educated theologians, they know exactly what we know, where these things came from. They know the fourth commandment's true. So why do they keep falling for it? Well, you know what? It's not a new thing. Here in Numbers 16, 1 through 5, now Korah, the son of Issachar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi, with Dathan and Abiram, and the sons of Eliab, and On, the son of Peleth, sons of Reuben, took action, and they rose up before Moses, together with some of the sons of Israel, 250 leaders of the congregation, chosen in the assembly, men of renown. They assembled together against Moses and Aaron and said to them, "You have gone far enough, for all the congregation are holy, every one of them, and Yahweh is in their midst. So why do you exalt yourself above the assembly of Yahweh?" When Moses heard this, he fell on his face, and he spoke to Korah and all his company, saying, "Tomorrow morning Yahweh will show you who is his and who is holy, and will bring him near to himself, even the one whom he will choose, and he will bring him near to himself." In this rebellion, all this 250 leaders of Israel, these are the people who saw the 10 plagues. They ran away with their kneading bowls on their shoulder. They made it across the ocean, or the sea that was split miraculously, and then turned around and closed on Pharaoh. They saw the pillar of fire by night and the cloud by day. They heard the voice of Yahweh from Mount Sinai. They were fed with the manna from heaven, and they decided to convince themselves that they should be the boss, not Moses. Can you imagine? And they wanted, because of their own ambition, I could do that too. Guess what? You can't. Moses was doing what he had to do, and he was the most humble man on earth at the time. And it's unbelievable. Unbelievable. But these folks saw the evidence, real evidence, not internet evidence, of Yahweh, and they decided they were going to be better than that. Yeah, that didn't work out. And here's another one that gets me. Solomon, 2 Chronicles 1, 7 through 12. In that night God appeared to Solomon and said to him, "Ask what I shall give you." Solomon said to God, "You have dealt with my father David with great loving kindness. You have made me king in his place. Now, O Yahweh Elohim, your promise to my father David is fulfilled, for you have made me king over a people as numerous as the dust of the earth. Give me now wisdom and courage, that I may go out and come in before this people, for who can rule this great people of yours?" God said to Solomon, "Because you have had this in mind and did not ask for riches, wealth, or honor, or the life of those who hate you, nor have you even asked for long life, but you have asked for yourself wisdom and knowledge, that you may rule my people over whom I have made you king. Wisdom and knowledge have been granted to you, and I will give you riches and wealth and honor, such as none of the kings who were before you has possessed, nor those who will come after you." So, Solomon asked for wisdom to lead the people. Then we switch to 1 Kings 11, 9 through 10. Yahweh was angry with Solomon because his heart had turned away from Yahweh, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice and had commanded him concerning this thing, that he should not go after other gods, but he did not observe what Yahweh had commanded. Brothers and sisters, if anybody should have known better. I mean, this is unbelievable. That the guy who was anointed by Yahweh to take over the kingdom asked for wisdom, got the wisdom, made the temple, consecrated the temple, got all the wealth, had all the people come to Israel, and he blew it. Why? Because he wanted to do it on his own terms. He wanted his ears tickled. Somehow Solomon convinced himself, yeah, we could bring in those idols. No big deal. You know what? We're going to be a diverse community. We're going to welcome all the gods of the land because I, Solomon, am the wisest man on earth. Yeah, that didn't work out. It didn't work out at all. And then we move on. 1 Kings 12:25 through 28. Then Jeroboam built Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim and lived there, and he went out from there and built Penuel. Jeroboam said in his heart, now the kingdom will return to the house of David. If this people go up to offer sacrifices in the houses of Yahweh, in the house of Yahweh at Jerusalem, then the heart of this people will return to the Lord, even to Rehoboam the king of Judah, and they will kill me and return to Rehoboam king of Judah. So the king consulted and made 2 golden calves, and he said to them, is it too much for you to go up to Jerusalem? It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold your gods, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. So the word Penuel, the city, one of the cities this guy built, Penuel, means face of God. This guy built a city called face of God and then turned around and made idols. But he knew they weren't idols. He knew they were just statues. He knew they were false. Brothers and sisters, let me tell you, if there's something that Israel should never have done again, it would be to have cow idols be called their gods. These guys all knew what happened to Aaron. They all knew what happened to those guys. They knew the truth. But somehow they tickled their ears. And where I'm going with this one, same with Solomon, but this one's worse. I don't know, can't really put a finger on that. It's the people that followed. The people knew the truth. The real temple stood. The real people went to the real pilgrimage festivals. And the people decided to just get their ears tickled. They're just going to go do whatever they want to do. And it's not going to work out. We need to surrender to Yahweh and do what He says to do. And don't turn to the right or the left. Today we have the same exact thing as this all over our society. The people followed Jeroboam and followed these false gods. Same with the people that worked at Theranos. Same with the lawyers at the universities and the Supreme Court. Same thing with Sunday, Christmas, Easter, and the Trinity. These things are all obviously not true, and you can't convince people otherwise for whatever reason. And it's kind of maddening at sometimes. And folks keep falling for it. They keep doing it. And why do we have this tendency to keep doing it? Well, guess what? Genesis 3:5. For Elohim knows that in the day you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like Elohim, knowing good and evil. We want to be like Elohim. We want to be the boss. See, we're made in the image of Elohim. We're made in the image of God. So we're supposed to emulate Him to a point. We're not supposed to become Him. And that's where these folks are going wrong. We have this tendency to want to be our own gods and live life on our own terms without regard to reality. We're going to overspend. We're going to not do the responsible thing and get a house or move in with relatives when we get old. We're going to, live like there's no tomorrow. We get tickled ears because we want to be able to set the rules. Solomon said there's nothing new under the sun. It spans all topics, not just religion. Those people at Theranos, that one hurts me because they knew when they were looking at that information that it was not true and it was impossible. And they kept doing it. And it had to be a scandal that it died. Nobody should have worked there. Those people should have gotten hired, took one look at the documentation, and ran away. Same with these law schools. You can't just say something's in the in the Constitution, because then we live in a totalitarian dictatorship. Then whoever's on the Supreme Court can just decide whatever they want to decide. and the people have no say. That's not our country. And in religion, eternity is on the line. When you read the scripture and it says what days to keep holy, what days to not keep holy, that Yeshua is the Messiah, that Yahweh is the Elohim, I mean, I just wish that people would humble themselves a bit and get themselves right. But it's the same. The people at Theranos are the same as the people who were worshiping the golden calves with Jeroboam. And there's nothing new under the sun. So thanks for listening. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. In the name of his son, Yeshua, please drop by firstcenturychristianity.net for more messages like this. Sign up to be on our email list. And, let's be called out of Babylon together. Have a blessed Shabbat. Bye-bye.